Thanks, Elise. And what'd you guys think of this guy, huh? So yeah, I just want to start by saying thanks to Elise, Charlie, and all the Next Jump team for having me here, and all of you for coming. I really appreciate you coming and listening to me today. My name is Mark Marshall, and I've been in the recruiting industry for about 17 years. And actually my co-pilot, I did bring a co-pilot. Dave, why don't you stand up? Yeah, this is Dave Varner. He's my number 2, my second in command, and he's been in recruiting for 6 years now. What Digitalent is, we're a recruiting agency that's specifically focused on placing interactive professionals. These are the guys that basically are building websites, mobile apps, social apps, creating like digital experiences. And our clients tend to be mainly ad production houses, digital production shops, media companies, PR agencies, because they tend to be the ones creating the most digital experiences for brands like Nike, Coke. But we do work with any company that's looking to increase their digital footprint. When it comes to placing interactive professionals, we're the best at it. A couple reasons. One, I have an amazing team of recruiters. This guy right here, two more back there, and the rest of them holding down the fort in our Midtown office. Other reasons, we focus strictly on digital. We're experts at what we do. Also, based on who we hire only recent college grads and train them from the ground up. So we basically get to mold and shape them the way we like, as opposed to bring somebody in from the outside who's not going to work well with our team, which leads to the next reason. We're very team-oriented. Everyone works together collectively. We work our butts off. Recruiting is really tough, and it's a grind. You got to come in and work really hard every day. The last reason is we actually genuinely care about our clients and the candidates that we work with. A little bit more about us. Actually, thankfully, I do have my notes here, as Michael pointed out. Before I start, I did want to ask you guys if there are any topics that you want me to cover regarding recruiting, which I'll try and integrate into my presentation. If not, you can write down questions we can get back to at the end. Okay. What's your name?
My name is Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Especially if you're recruiting recent college grads, one thing that we struggle with is when somebody doesn't have a career experience by which to compare the expectations of the role that you want them to fill, how do you judge how they'll do in that role?
Okay, that's a great question. I'll definitely try and cover that either during or at the end of my presentation. Anyone else? Can you write that down? Okay.
Hi, this is Emily from the Boston office. I'm actually leading the recruiting effort for the office, but I was curious to your opinion about culture fit versus skills. Like, what's more important? Where do you find the balance between the two?
Okay, actually, I'll cover that right now. A very good next jump-oriented question. For me, for us, there are two categories that are critical, absolutely critical, when it comes to hiring people for your company. First, performance is important. You want somebody who can ultimately, if they don't have the ready-made skills, then you want to make sure they actually have the potential to learn what it is you're going to teach them. But on the, if they're not a cultural fit, then there's very little that you can do, I've found. If they don't possess the same principles, core values, then that's a lot more challenging than it is to actually train them how to do the actual job. All right, so any other questions before I move on? Okay, great. All right, so onto the meat of my presentation. How do we define recruiting? All right, pretty much it can be broken down into two components. The first is actually, it's kind of the obvious, is finding the talent. And the second, which is less obvious, is actually selling the talent. Okay, so let's start by talking about how do we find great talent. All right, so there are a bunch of different options to consider. I'm just going to create a list here, which Virginia is going to be so kind to jot down for me. First, the most obvious is you post an ad for a job. Now, traditionally, you did this via the newspaper. If anybody's doing this in newspaper these days, please stop. Nobody's reading the paper anymore. It's all done online. Actually, your best places to post an ad are probably on LinkedIn. Monster job boards aren't quite as effective as they used to be. The second related to that is actively searching for resumes and candidates on a job board or LinkedIn. Third, and I would be remiss if I didn't include this, is to use an external recruiting agency. Number 4 is you hire an internal recruiter or a recruiting team. And the 5th is an employee referral program. Okay, and let me break it down individually. First, starting with posting ads for your job. I'm going to talk from our experience more than just general. So for us, the types of talent we look for, digital media professionals, it's a tough market these days. There are, regardless of how the general economy is doing, the digital marketplace is very strong. There are a ton of opportunities and a very low volume of talent. You post a job online for, let's say, a digital producer or a user experience expert. Chances are you're going to get a lot of resumes of people who want to do the work, but they don't have any of the qualifications. Okay, so it really depends on the types of jobs you're posting for. But for us, little to no success. We don't even bother. The next is finding resumes on job boards, LinkedIn. This is actively, doing a Boolean search and actively looking for resumes, basically on LinkedIn, on Monster, on Indeed. This actually can work quite well. To divvy up the two because they aren't the same, LinkedIn now is a lot more effective. It's the best source for finding resumes. The job boards, Monster, I used to live and die by Monster. For many years, it's no longer as wonderful as it used to be because people just aren't relying on it as much for they're accustomed to people reaching out to them via LinkedIn. Problem is, for most companies, for most people, it is really time consuming. For us, we have a team of 4 recruiters led by our own Mike Giagrosso over there, and they're constantly scouring LinkedIn every day, checking job boards. It's probably, 50% of what you do every day?
It's a full-time job.
Yeah, it's a full-time job. All right. The next is you hire an amazing digital recruiting agency, or recruiting agency rather, and hopefully it's a company like Digitalent, and a lot of pros to that. Basically, we do all the heavy lifting for you. You give them a job description, then you don't have to worry about posting a job, getting a bunch of resumes, having to go through all of them. If they're doing their job the right way, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, then they're pre-qualifying all the candidates for you before they actually present them to you. Okay? Other things, we work on a contingency basis. So, or most agencies, I should say, work on a contingency basis. Some work on a retainer. We do not. So what that means is we only get paid if you hire somebody from us. All right. The other thing is we're commission-based. We are salespeople. So related to only getting paid if we fill your job, we're seriously motivated. All right, we don't eat if we don't fill jobs, so we don't get paid for setting up setting up interviews, sending you resumes. Cons. All right, I'm remiss to tell you these, but there are some cons to working with an agency recruiter. We are expensive. You know, if you hire somebody, we charge you a fee. Generally, it's in the neighborhood of 20-25% of that person's first year's earnings, so you guys can do the math. All right. Plus, we're not going to be dedicated to you exclusively, except under very unusual circumstances. Usually, we're sending the same candidates to multiple companies. Okay. The other thing, or the other option, I should say, is hiring an internal recruiter or an internal recruiting team. Basically, pros to doing that above working with like an agent like myself. One, it's a fixed cost. All right. Generally speaking, you pay these guys a salary, and if you're filling a lot of positions, then it ends up being a lot more cost effective than if you're using a recruiter every time you hire for a new spot. As a matter of fact, I can think of several companies who have used us regularly, and over the years they looked at their budget and said, you know what, we can't work with you anymore because we've decided to hire an internal recruiter or recruiting team. Next, they're a member of the company. All right, so technically they should know your product better. They should know your company better, your people. They're physically there. All right. Next, they're a dedicated resource. They're not working with other companies, or at least you hope they're not. It's not like you need to worry that they're going to be sending their candidates out to other competing agencies or companies. Cons for using an internal recruiter, the obvious. If you're not hiring, if you're not filling a lot of positions or consistently hiring, then it becomes more of a cost center. It only makes sense if to have somebody in that role if you're constantly growing. Worst case scenario is you actually stop hiring, you have an internal recruiter, then potentially have to lay them off, which obviously nobody wants to get involved with. What else? Arguably, and this isn't, this is an opinion, so forgive me if you're an internal recruiter when I say this, but since you do work on salary, you may not have the same incentive or urgency to fill your jobs as quickly. Okay. Other thing is they tend to have a smaller pool of candidates. Digitalent, for example, we have 12 recruiters on staff. I've been doing this for, I've been in digital for 10 years. Digitalent has existed for 4 years. We have a huge pool of candidates. All right. Cons for both engaging an internal recruiter team or an external recruiter is there are a lot of bad recruiters out there. All right. I know from working at other agencies and just hearing what goes on out there in the marketplace, and I'm sure you guys, actually, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys have worked with a recruiter and it worked out absolutely terribly? Okay, all right. So what I'm going to teach you guys now is how to recognize a good recruiter, let alone an exceptional one. Okay. First, a good recruiter is an expert in their field. All right. For example, Digitalent, we focus on one thing only. We do it really well, and we also, have a large pool of candidates in the digital marketplace already. So when you come to us with a job, chances are we have, 4 or 5 people who are immediately available. We know they're looking, who could be a fit, so we can start setting up interviews for you right away. All right. Same would apply like if you're looking for an accountant, for a lawyer. Doctor, anything. Try and work with a recruiter who actually has expertise in that field. I've heard of so many companies out there who claim to be able to do a little bit of everything, and what do you get? You get like a jack of all trades and a master of none. So next, something we do is if we get you on the phone or in an in-person meeting, particularly if we're speaking to you for the first time, we're going to ask for a ton of information. All right? I like to tell my clients and my candidates, the more information we get from you up front, the less time we're going to spend helping you find the right candidate for the job or the right job for you. So basically, we go through things like tangible and intangible qualities that you look for in a candidate, daily responsibilities. Why is that important? It actually helps you, candidates want to know what they're going to be doing. Actually, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that in the second half of my presentation. Salary. Obviously, we want to be able to send you people who are going to be within the salary range, not too expensive. Company culture, team environment, like who are you going to be working with? And we actually always ask the question, what do you like about working here? All right. Again, that's more to the second part of my presentation here. That's going to apply when it comes to selling a candidate. All right. Also, somebody in terms of finding a good recruiter, you want somebody who actually really cares, genuinely cares about finding candidates who best match you and your company. All right. For example, Digitalent, we're all about building long-term relationships, and realize that one bad hire can mean losing a client. All right. So we're really careful about who we represent. Dave had a situation recently where a company wanted to hire one of our candidates, and Dave, we had an offer. All right, we would have made money on this, but Dave called his manager and said, "Paul, I don't think you should hire this guy. I've heard some things, I've done some research, and I think you'd be making a mistake by bringing him on board." Well, what happened?
He thanked me, didn't take my advice, hired him anyway. And within 1 week, the guy quit to go to a sister agency, actually, and totally screwed the whole situation up.
Yeah.
No, I didn't make any money.
Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes the client still decides to make that move anyway. But at least they don't point the finger at us at the end of the day. So
you want a recruiter who has a lot of integrity. Right? Somebody, like when Mark says, get somebody who genuinely cares about taking care of the candidate and the client. That's important whether they're internal or external. And you want to get somebody, especially if they're internal, that really wants to make sure that they're getting the right people. Because if they're just trying to plug holes, then they're not going to do a good job. They're going to do their recruiting process sloppily, and you're going to end up with a bunch of bad talent. And it doesn't matter whether they're really senior or they're entry level. You want to make sure that you're getting a recruiter who really cares about taking care of the people that they're working with.
Okay, on to the next. I don't care what anybody tells you, recruiting is sales. You want somebody who's a great salesman, all right? And it starts with just convincing them to take the time and energy out of their day to go on an interview. Interviews are an uncomfortable experience. All right, nobody really likes interviewing. I mean, there are very few people, I like interviewing, but there are very few people out there who actually want to go on an interview, let alone they've probably got to do it in the middle of the day, make an excuse to their boss. So you have to have somebody who actually is able to make your job sound so amazing, so exciting, that they're going to say, you know what, I'm going to call in sick, I'm going to take the day off, whatever it takes, I'm going to go on that meeting, okay? Which leads to the next point, somebody who can effectively close and deliver the candidate. All right, two different things. Starting with closing, I mean, there's a lot, I could give you guys hours of meetings on how to pre-close and close, but to sum it up, somebody who addresses all the candidates' questions, concerns, They negotiate the salary. So by the time the client makes an offer, they actually know they're going to accept it, and they're going to accept it happily. And then actually getting them to commit to starting and doing it as soon as possible. All right. Because the longer, and another point I should make is, just because a candidate has actually accepted your offer verbally, written, whatever it is, it doesn't mean they're actually going to start the job. There are a lot of things that can happen in between. So time is the enemy. All right. You want somebody who to start their new job within 2 weeks or less. All right. There's too much room for things like a counteroffer. All right. And that's another thing an effective, great recruiter will do is they coach a candidate on how to turn down a counteroffer. All right. For us, the process starts in our first interview with our candidates. All right. If we think that one of our candidates is only going to make a move because of money, we don't work with them. We don't work with them because it's too easy for them to say to their boss, you know what, I'm leaving. I got a 10K bump from this, or an offer that's 10K more from this new company. And they just say, well, if we increase your salary at 15 and promise them all sorts of things, which they may or may not deliver, they're going to stay. Okay. Bad recruiter is obviously somebody who is missing, one or more of these traits. A lot of these traits are difficult to spot because you're not gonna see them until you're well within the process. But I will give you guys one very good indication. When you first talk to a recruiter, if they breeze through the job description, if they only get like bare bones information from you, not a good sign. All right, if they're just content to get, what's the title of the job? All right, well, what's the salary? Okay, then we'll start sending you people. I mean, chances are if you get anyone at all, you're going to get a bunch of resumes of people who, aren't even close, and they're just throwing up Hail Marys, hoping that one of them hits. Okay, so bad sign. If that happens, then just stop working with them immediately and move on. Okay. Next method of finding people, employee referrals. All right, I'm going to start again with Digitalent. When I referenced Mike and I said their team spends 50% of the time on LinkedIn actively looking for candidates, probably the other half of the time is managing their network of referrals. Our candidates, when we place them, when we work with them, sometimes if they don't even, we don't even find them a job, tend to be incredibly grateful when, for the service that we provide, and they're always referring their friends, colleagues, people they used to work with, but basically, hang on one second, guys. Basically, for you, it's going to operate a little differently. All right. I've talked to a lot of people who have these employee referral programs, and the incentive is more monetary. For us, I can count on one hand like how many times I've actually given somebody like a referral bonus for sending us a candidate. They usually do it again out of gratitude. They're really happy for the service that we provided. For employers, it may work a little differently. Your best source is your employees, and hopefully they're proud to be a part of the company. Like Next Jump, I would imagine they get a ton of referrals from their employees. Do you guys have a referral program, incidentally?
We used to. Do we have one now? Not really, actually.
Like at the height of when we used recruit engineers, we had one that I think it went $10,000 per candidate.
Mm-hmm.
We got hired.
Wow, I mean that's
externally as well. It's just incredible. But there's so many applicants now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, ideally, you have a company that's so great that people are dying to work there, and you don't need to have any of these programs in place. You don't need to use internal recruiters, external, whatever. It's a great way. It's a cheaper, more cost-effective way to find candidates. 10K. That's the highest I've ever heard. Usually, the bonus program is about $3,000 to $5,000, which may sound like a lot of money, but if you work with external recruiter like myself, it's going to be a large multiple of that. So, I mean, our average fee is probably $20,000, okay? On to the next part of my presentation here, selling your candidate on the opportunity. So let's say, like you're an internal recruiter, or, you're working with an amazing recruiting agency like Digitalent. They finally found you a great candidate. How do you actually sell them on your job? I mean, people don't understand that it's not just about finding the talent, it's actually getting them fired up about working for your company, okay? So for us, when we get feedback from our candidates after an interview, one of the questions we ask, or it's actually the last question we ask, do you want the job? All right, we get three answers, or one of three answers, I should say. One is yes, two, no, and anyone guess the other one? I don't know. Exactly. The top reason, the number one reason that candidates come back with an I don't know response is because they don't have enough information. All right, they left with unanswered questions. They have concerns that weren't properly addressed. The other half of why you get like a no or I don't know response, something that Michael can certainly tell you, the people that they met with, they weren't dynamic or engaging enough. All right, why is that? Because hiring managers, they usually make the mistake of screening a candidate only against their qualifications, for the position, and not actually selling them enough. All right. So basically, if you meet with somebody that you're not thrilled about, then it's up to you whether or not you actually do the next part. Sometimes it can be helpful, because even if you don't like a candidate, they can become a great advocate for your company. They're going to go back out into the marketplace and they're going to talk about you, whether you actually offer them the position or not. So there's always a benefit to selling anyone. But certainly if you meet somebody that you like, that you want to hire, you have to sell them. It's absolutely critical. All right. So how do you sell somebody? All right. I imagine there are a lot of people here who are heads of companies and they're not doing the majority of the interviewing themselves, or maybe they do like the final rounds of interviews. It starts with the people you have actually doing the interview. You want to make sure you have the right person in that interview seat. All right. It's somebody who actually is going to say great things about the company. Somebody who's going to have great energy, enthusiasm. Who's going to get the candidate fired up about working there. I can't tell you how many times we've had a candidate come out of an interview, and this could have been after they've met with 5, 6, half a dozen people who all have blown them away. One bad interview can kill the whole deal. Dave, that happened to you recently as well, didn't it?
Yeah, it happens pretty often where they'll come out of a meeting and they'll just say that either the person was lackluster or worse. We have candidates go in an interview with a manager, and the manager will give negative feedback to the candidate. Instead of selling them, they'll do the opposite. They'll be jaded or burnt out or overworked, and they'll tell the candidate these things. The candidate comes out and says, it looks like the manager's half out the door. Why would I ever want to work there?
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, like one person who negative sells, the company or the position, it's done. It's unrecoverable. So be very particular about who you have interview the candidate. And if you find that one of your people is speaking negatively about the company, then you deal with that right away. Obviously, you've got bigger issues to deal with on top of that. All right, next is once you have the right person in that seat, they need to genuinely believe in your product. All right, so your product is your company, your opportunity. Maybe it's your department, a collective of all those things combined. All right, it's absolutely essential. Like for us, we work with a number of different clients, and I'd like to say we believe in every single one of them. All right, we tried working with companies before, and they've had a lot of jobs that we've been given to work on, and they're offering the same exact money. and maybe, like even hiring more quickly than some of our other clients. But we can't work with them just because we don't believe in them. Like, we'll have, hear enough stuff in the marketplace about their reputation being bad. Maybe we've even placed a couple people there who, who get back to us. We always check in with our candidates after they've been somewhere for a month or two, who absolutely hate it. I mean, how can we effectively sell our candidates on those types of jobs? So you got to believe in what you're doing. There's no question, because it's just going to come across as ingenuine during the interview when you meet with that person. All right, it's not something you can fake. This is really important, especially for us. Know your audience. I mean, Michael said this before. Discover what, figure out what the candidate wants, and also what they don't want. For us, when we start off an interview with one of our candidates, Mike, what's the first question we ask? Yeah. So, what do you think the benefit of that is? Anyone?
Can you repeat that question?
Mike, one more time. Stand up. Stand up. Move around. Project yourself.
What sort of opportunity are you looking for? Like, what are you really looking to do next? Got it? Good?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll explain it. You find out what they care about. You're basically, they're giving you the answers to the test. All right. Obviously, if your job doesn't hit any of what we like to call their hot buttons, there's not a whole lot you can do. But when it comes time to talk about your opportunity, what to highlight. What they're, instead of just selling blindly and telling them everything, throwing everything but the kitchen sink at them, you actually know how to, what to focus on. Another question we ask is, why are you looking to leave your current employer? All right. Also important, because we figure out what they don't want, what they're not looking for. And same thing, like, let's say, I'm just going to give you an example. You find out they're working really long hours. Your opportunity has a great work-life balance. You're probably going to want to mention that. Okay. Next, what exactly is it that I'm going to be doing? All right. Don't rely on a written job description. I know a lot of, not to call people out, a lot of HR people who will send out a written job description and think that that's going to cover it. And they just interview a candidate against their qualifications, and they never take the time to actually verbally explain what they're going to do. Michael, what did you say before? A piece of paper doesn't talk? It doesn't communicate? People communicate, all right? And if you can describe the job with passion, with energy, with enthusiasm, then all the better, okay? Next is, what is the company and the office culture like? Most of the time when people go in for an interview, they go to the lobby. Then they get shuttled into a back room. It's a conference room, somebody's private office. They never see anything in between. All right. If you like somebody, give them a quick tour of the office when you're done. You don't know how impactful that can be. All right. Especially, you got a company like NextJump with happy people, got lots of cool stuff posted all over the walls. I mean, I can't tell you how many times somebody's come in of an interview with one of my great clients, and they've had an opportunity to see the space, the office, and they're, they say, wow, the energy in that place is amazing. And 9 times out of 10, that's what actually sells them on the company. All right. And next point, kind of related to that, is, who am I going to be working with? All right. Have them meet with other team members. I know a ton of hiring managers who will just bring somebody in, meet with the candidate for half an hour, let them go and say, you know what, I want to hire this guy or this girl. What does the candidate say? Well, you know what, I didn't meet with anyone else. I don't know what the rest of the team is like. Who am I going to be working with? So even if it's not really required, even if you don't need their opinion, you know what, have them meet with some of the people on your team. And related back to having the right person in that interview seat, choose your team members wisely. If you know somebody's a weak interviewer, isn't going to properly sell the company, maybe you shouldn't have that person interview them. or at least coach them on how to properly interview first before you have them start to meet with your people. But yeah, you sit them in front of your other employees who are really proud, excited to be part of your company. Those are the ones who are really going to sell. All right. And next, always give them the chance to ask questions at the end of the meeting. All right. Again, related back to what I said earlier, most candidates come out with an I don't know response when I ask them, do you want the job? Because they just don't have enough information. The client didn't give them enough time to actually ask what they cared to hear about. All right, so pretty simple. So basically, just remember your options when it comes to finding candidates. You can run ads. You can scour job boards for resumes if that's what you choose to do. Hire an internal recruiter, external recruiter. Just make sure it's a good one. Or you can put together a referral program for your employees. All right, but whatever you do, once you find like a great candidate that you want to hire, you have to sell them. Thank you very much.
So I think we're going to do the same thing as last time. We can go around. We might have time to go around twice in each office. So we'll start with Boston again, and then we'll go to London, and then we'll come back here to New York. If anybody has a question that they want to write down on their note card and pass it up front, it might be easier so people can hear since the mic's on up here. So, Boston, do you guys have questions?
Where am I looking here? I'm so confused.
Neither one, because
Okay, which one's Boston? Raise your hand, please. Hi, Boston.
Thanks for the talk.
You're welcome.
We have a few questions here, but the first question is, as you looked at companies, because we've talked in this on some of the lateral recruiting, which it sounds like you do more of, we've gone to, we call it like a multiple date process, so have them come back over a series of times versus kind of all in one shot, even if that one shot includes multiple interviews. I'm curious from your vantage point of seeing different clients or companies that have had more success, have they used more of the multiple dates, kind of the single dates? What strategies have you seen to be effective? All right.
Well, for us, I said the term earlier, time is the enemy. Our clients, a lot of them are top ad agencies, and they're doing great work, but they're all competing against the same pool of candidates. So even if somebody goes into a meeting and they think it's a wonderful company, the more time that passes between that first meeting and the next meeting, the chances are they're going to be meeting with many other companies in the meantime, and they'll forget, what made that original company so amazing. It's a tough one. You want to, properly, obviously, pre-qualify your candidates, make sure that they've got the qualifications, the culture fit, all that stuff before you hire them. But what we suggest is trying to have them meet with as many people as possible when they do come to interview. All right. So when the number of times they go back becomes beyond 3 or 4 times, then the candidate gets pretty antsy. And also you have to remember. Most of these guys are working as well. They just don't have the time to, interview over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, a lot of times they're rightly so. Their bosses become suspicious after they've been out of the office for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time. And you've got another doctor's appointment. Really? Is that why you're leaving again? So for us, it tends to be less is better in that case. Less rounds.
Question in London.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. One of the questions here is, when working with agencies, how do you get them to understand our culture?
You want to take that, Dave?
Bring them in the office. Yeah, it's the most important thing. When we get a client who doesn't want to give us the time to help us understand and learn who they are, the potential for us to be effective in representing them and selling them to our candidates becomes minimal. The more time that you spend with us to help us understand who you are, what you're about, what your culture is like, the type of people who are going to work, the more effective we are, and not only identifying people who are going to be the right fit, but then being able to sell who you guys are to our candidates. And that's really where we're most effective for you. And that's the one benefit of having an internal recruiter. One of the biggest benefits over an external is they're in the space, they know the culture, they know the people, but you can get that same benefit if you spend the time up front with an external recruiter, and a lot of companies don't want to do that, but what ends up happening is they don't want to spend the 10 minutes or the half hour, the hour up front, and then I'm wasting a lot more time interviewing a lot of candidates who end up not being a fit. So it's sort of the penny wise, pound foolish. Spend the time with them up front and make sure that they see your space and get to know your people. Introduce them to teammates. Let them meet the hiring managers. We're always more effective when we're working directly with a hiring manager because we sit down and we ask them, what are you really looking for in a candidate? What do you really need? How do you define success? What are your expectations? People who have come onto your team and done well, why is that? You know, what type of culture, what type of manager are you, right? Are you tough? Are you lenient? Do you like to micromanage? Do you like to be very hands-off? And that helps us get candidates that are going to be a good fit with that, rather than, think about that, even 1 hour with me is less than 8 hours of somebody in the seat that's not going to end up being a fit. They've wasted the whole day. And that's just if it's one day. If it's a week or a month or 3 months, they've wasted 3 months of their time. So be smart about investing the time up front. It's going to save you a ton of time later on.
So one of the questions we have from New York is, since you're hiring college grads without specific skills or experience, how do you go about judging for cultural fit, capacity to learn, ambition, engagement, and the like?
Well, for us, first of all, we meet with a ton of people from college. I mean, it starts with, we have no qualifications. You're right, to your question back there, on which to really judge them. Because it's not like, there are any colleges out there with recruiting training programs and, like they come ready-made. So for us, it's all about cultural fit. Cultural fit, learning potential. Our formula is not exact. For better or worse, we do end up hiring a lot of people who just don't work out. Maybe they've got all the potential in the world. They fit into our culture really well, but they just don't like recruiting. At the end of the day, I mean, you're making a lot of cold calls all day. You always have to be on when you speak to people. It's a tough job. It's not for everyone. In terms of Seema.
Yeah, I was going to say the learner versus expert.
Yeah, where did I learn that? Yeah, I mean, to Seema's point, thank you, Seema, for pointing that out. Charlie articulated it extremely well, and we've always adopted the same philosophy. We look for people who have a student mentality versus an expert mentality, and that applies to college students too. I mean, you have we're in the age of the millennials, and a lot of kids who are graduating from school today, they're entitled. They think they already get it, and when you try and teach them, when you try and train them, they're very reluctant, very resistant. They don't take criticism well. They're never taking responsibility for their actions. So that's one thing we try and we try and evaluate. People who are actually going to be grateful for the training that we give them, receptive, humble, and who are going to work well with our team-oriented atmosphere.
And if I can just add one more thing.
Absolutely.
Trust your employees. It goes back to having the candidate meet with a lot of employees. We make sure that every candidate that we bring in meets with every single person in the company, including the office manager. Now, obviously, if you're 300 people, you can't do that. But make sure that they have the opportunity to meet with a lot of people, because your people are your best advocates. They're your best cheerleaders, your best salespeople, but they're also the best judge of character because they're already in the company. They know what type of culture exists. They know who they're going to want to work with. And so even if there isn't tangible skill set yet, those individuals on the team, doesn't matter whether they're really senior or really junior, they're going to be able to make the assessment, do I want to work with this person? Do I think they'll be a good cultural fit? Do they have the same ambition and motivation and gratitude that I had when I came in? So rely on your employees to help with the hiring process rather than just a hiring manager who may look at, exclusively qualifications.
Great. I think we have time to go around one more time. So I don't know, Boston, do you guys have any more questions?
Outside of money, when you ask a question to candidates, why are you looking to leave your current role? What are the top 3 reasons that you get?
I'm going to defer to my recruiting manager since he's been hearing a lot more of this information these days. Go ahead, Michael.
I would say one is lack of leadership. Another is there is structural changes, whether that be because they're losing accounts or they don't like what they're working on. And actually a lot is just based on culture. If you have a flat culture, why are you working there? That's one of the most important things. That anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a week with these people. If the culture's not right, you should ultimately be somewhere where you want to work and you enjoy people and what you're working on. So that's probably the top side of the money.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it has to do with the culture. Like, and companies are constantly changing. Like Michael said, they're losing projects, they're losing clients, or there's shifts in management. And for better or worse, there's no consistency. So when they join a company with a certain expectation, once that changes for the worse, then immediately they're back in the market.
Glenn, do you guys have another question?
Yeah, well, hi Mark. So we were just wondering, you touched upon having a student mindset, and what's the best way that you found to filter out, from a lateral recruitment standpoint, people with a student mindset versus expert opinion?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
They ask a lot of questions. When a candidate comes in and they're really eager to learn, if they're eager to learn in an interview, they're probably going to be eager to learn on the job. And so one of the biggest things that I look for when I'm interviewing folks for us or even candidates for my clients is you can tell if they're a learner or they're a student if they ask a lot of questions, if they're inquisitive, and if they really care about the interview rather than just going in, selling themselves, hoping they can get a couple offers so they can shop them around and take the job that's going to pay them the most. So it's about their interest and also the questions that they ask. Are they asking about what's the work-life balance? How much vacation time do I have? What sort of salary does the position pay versus what is the culture like? Do you guys do anything to promote philanthropic, efforts or whatever? It really just, how can I come in and make a difference? There's all sorts of questions that candidates will ask that will give off or tip you off as to whether they're an expert or whether they're a student.
Yeah. And one other thing related to that is if they interview with, let's say they're interviewing with multiple people in your company. One thing I hate is when a candidate gets in front of me. I'm usually the last interview, and I ask them if they have any questions, and they say, "No, your other team members already answered them for me." For me, that's a bad sign. It says they just went through the motions of asking questions, but they weren't really interested. Certainly weren't interested to hear different perspectives. I love when somebody says, "You know what, your team answered a ton of my questions, but if it's okay, I'm going to ask you some of the same questions because I would love to hear your perspective. I'm sure your perspective is a little bit different than theirs."
I think that questions that candidates ask tend to fall into two categories, and one is what can you do for me, and the other is what can I do for you. And you really want a candidate who's going to ask questions that relate to what can I do for you, how can I come in and add value versus what can you do for me, what are you guys going to give me.
So just one final question from New York. How do you train people to interview? I know you guys mentioned finding a good fit, somebody who is really excited, but say it's their first time interviewing, are there any ways that you actually point them in the right direction or some tips that you provide?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean,
I have 4 questions.
yeah. Most of the time, the people that we're representing, they've interviewed before. I mean, the best thing we can do is prep them for what to expect. And I mean, it's a two-way street, right? Like, we're working equally with our clients as we are with our candidates. So for us, full disclosure, we try and get, I mean, a lot of the information we get from our clients is so we can actually prep our candidates accordingly, so they know, what we give them the job description. This is exactly what you're going to be doing, so what what types of questions are going to be asked. We tell them about, if we know the manager well, then sometimes we tell them the types of questions that the manager is going to be inclined to ask. We tell them to do their research, like just read about the company, and just like like I was saying before, we want to make sure, or it's important for you to be passionate about your product. Read up on the company and get excited about what they're doing. So you can go in with genuine energy and enthusiasm when you meet with, the people you're going to interview with. And Dave, you wanted to add, you had questions?
I don't know where I got these from, but I prep every single one of my candidates with 4 questions. And when I'm working with a client that interviews a lot of my people, I'm sure they hear them over and over. So I know that the managers know that my candidates are being coached, and that's okay, because the questions serve both sides. And I'll list the 4, and if any of you are ever planning to interview anywhere ever again, you can use these. The first question that I have candidates ask, and it's the most important, is what are you really looking for in a candidate? And what that does is it forces the manager to tell them really what they're looking for, so that the candidate knows what to speak to, right? It helps the candidate sell themselves against what the manager wants. And the candidate can't fake it, right? So they're either going to convince the manager that they're going to be a great fit against what the manager's looking for, or both sides are going to realize that it's not a fit. But they're forcing each other to be transparent. So that's the first question. What are you really looking for in a candidate? The second question is, if you were to come in and hire me, if you were to hire me today, and I were to come in tomorrow and start, what sort of things could I do right off the bat that would make the biggest impact? And it's kind of like asking the first question, but it's a lot more pointed. And that achieves a few things for the candidate. The first thing it does is it forces the manager to picture them in the role. And if the manager's like, oh, I don't want to work with this person, they'll know pretty quickly. The second thing it does is it shows the manager that the candidate is motivated and wants to make a difference. It also shows the manager that the candidate is focused on solutions rather than problems. And that's really what it does, is it allows the candidate to learn where some of the pain points may lie without asking the negative question, which I hate, which is, what are your biggest challenges? It's like going on a date and having the person across from you tell you about their life stresses. It distracts the manager, doesn't do the candidate any favors. Let them ask, what can I do right off the bat that would make the biggest impact? Let's talk about how we can help one another. How can we add value? Rather than, what are your problems? Right? The third question that I have candidates ask is, I kind of mentioned this briefly, folks who have come in and been successful, whether it be the team, the company, this account, whatever it is, why have they been successful? What sort of characteristics do they possess? What sort of things have they done? And that's going to force the manager to tell the candidate what their expectations are, right? Maybe it's, I need somebody who's going to be really dedicated, who can work nights and weekends. And maybe the candidate says, well, that's not me. But at least then and both sides can figure that out before the person accepts the job and quits in 2 weeks because they're working nights and weekends. And then the last question is, most people ask this, some sort of variation, but what is it about you guys, company X, right? What is it about Next Jump that makes you guys special? And I think it's important to word it like that. It's a lot different than saying, what's your differentiating factor, or tell me about Next Jump, why are you guys a great company to work for? What is it about Next Jump that makes you guys special? It's personal. And I have my candidates ask each and every single one of the managers these 4 questions. And again, it's perspective. So if you're meeting with an account manager, and then you're meeting with a director, and then you're meeting with a creative, each of those people plays a different role within the company, within the team. They're going to want something different out of the candidate. And that forces the candidate and the interviewer to make it very personal. And then if you have a lot of people on your team interviewing with your candidate, you can sit down with those people and say, what do you think? And you're going to get a really strong opinion from each of your interviewers about whether they think that they would be a good fit for what it is that they each need. So.